Joy Guru. Want to become a Brahmin? Then just listen this story. A person who has known Brahman is called Brahmin. Now everybody wants to be Brahmin because everybody wants peace, bliss and permanent enjoyment, ceaseless enjoyment. As a matter of fact, Brahman, it is the very embodiment of peace, bliss and enjoyment. So everybody, I say we all want to be Brahmin. And our inner nature is such, that is our inner nature is Satchidananda. That means we want enjoyment. And maybe we do not know it, most of us, or we can say some of us do not know it consciously, but it's a fact. Now, the question is how to become a Brahmin. Now, you see, there are some egos, I should say, some kind of complexes. As a matter of fact, there are some impediments, there are some obstacles in the, in the big pathway of becoming Brahmin. And most of, you can say the chief of these is definitely the rigid ego. It is the stumbling block, it is the chief, one of the chief reasons why we cannot become Brahmin. Now in this regard, let us hear a story. And the story was narrated by Sri Thakur Anukula Chandra on 21st July 1947, when he was seated on a four-leg stool under a mango tree at Devghar Dham. And at that point of time, and on that particular day, LNG Mittam, an American, came. And as usual was the case, conversation began. And LNG Mittam wanted to know from Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra, can ego be completely eradicated, removed from a person? Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra replied, everybody has ego. Without ego, our very existence would evaporate. So therefore ego is necessary. But flexible ego is what is needed, what is required, not rigid ego. And he had explained the difference between flexible ego and rigid ego. He said that flexible ego is that ego, in other words, the quality of flexible ego is to make others great, to make others big, and it does not want to establish itself without acknowledging others. On the other hand, rigid ego, its quality is such that it wants to establish itself without acknowledging others. It wants to suppress others. And then he narrated this story. Not that this story is unheard of. This story is a mythological story. In fact, it's an ancient story. That is the Viswamitra sage. He was a sage. He was not a Brahmin initially, but he wanted to become Brahmin. And naturally, he started strong religious rites, strong religious austerity. And so much so that, you see, he wrapped himself in the meditation. And then Brahmana, I am talking about Brahmana, not Brahman. There is a difference between Brahmana and Brahman. Brahman means absolute being. There is the supreme being that we call as God. While Brahmana is the divine body who has assigned, you can say upon whom it is God has assigned the task of creation. In other words, in common language, we say that Brahmana as God of creation. And that Brahma, that is Brahmana, told Viswamitra that you would be regarded or you would be treated as Brahmin only when Vasishtha Rishi would acknowledge you as Brahmin. And at this point, I must say that Sri Thakur Anukul Chandra has stated that by Brahmana, I mean common mind, or you can say common people, while by Vasishtha, I mean a man of special wisdom and experience. He has the power to discern who has achieved who has achieved real greatness. This is the see the two terms that he had explained us. And then he narrated this story, and therefore, accordingly, Vishwamitra went to Vasishtha Rishi and claimed for such status and said that you must acknowledge me as Brahmin. And Vasishtha Muni immediately realized that Vishwamitra has not reached the status of being a Brahmin because he had a rigid ego. Therefore, he could not recognize him as Brahmin. He could not acknowledge him as Brahmin. And being, bitterly, Vasishtha was bitterly angry, and he troubled, Vishwamitra was bitterly angry, and he troubled Vasishtha in as many ways as possible. But even then, as was the nature of Vasishtha Rishi, he endured all the troubles, pains, agonies that were hurled by Vishwamitra. But even then, he could not acknowledge Vishwamitra as Brahmin, because till then, or you can say up to that point of time, Vishwamitra could not. Vishwamitra Vishwamitra was not free from rigid ego, and being absolutely furious, Vasishtha proposed to make a religious sacrifice to annihilate Vasishtha Rishi. And Vishwamitra, I'm telling you about Vishwamitra so got absolutely furious, and he proposed to conduct a religious sacrifice to annihilate Vasishtha Rishi. And accordingly, he invited Vasishtha Rishi to become the priest for this religious sacrifice. Vasishtha Rishi heartily agreed upon to his proposal, and the rite began. The sacrifice began. At the end of the sacrifice, Vasishtha went towards the sacrificial fire and for self-immolation. At this juncture, huge repentance gripped in the hearts of Vishwamitra. He immediately forbade Vasishtha not to self-immolate within the sacrificial fire. And that is, Vishwamitra immediately extinguished the sacrificial fire with water, and he told Vasishtha, I do not want to be Brahmin. I want to serve you as much as I can, because you are a great person. I could not fathom your greatness. So therefore, I want to serve you. I do not want to be Brahmin. And he immediately embraced his holy feet, that is Vasishtha's holy feet, and began to cry. At that very moment, Vasishtha acknowledged him as Brahmin. And then Sri Thakur and Kulchandra had stated to LNG Mettam that, see, whenever a person surrenders before a real Brahmin, and whenever a person practices as per the advice of that real Brahmin, then his rigid ego gradually sublimates into flexible ego. And whenever the rigid ego would be completely transformed into flexible ego, at that moment he becomes a real Brahmin. So in conclusion, I must say that anybody can become a Brahmin. The only obstacle is that we would have to, transform our rigid ego into flexible ego. And it's not possible unless and until we surrender ourselves totally, before the holy feet of a real Brahmin. As a matter of fact, at the end, you can say in conclusion, we may go even a step further to say that we need a mentor to become Brahmin. That is, to become Brahmin means that is to achieve the state of being Brahmana. That is, to become Brahmana. So that means to get all the, you can say, the endless pleasure, eternal pleasure, eternal enjoyment, so therefore, we need a real mentor. You see, if we want to become Brahmin. So, live in love, joy,